John O'Naylor.
I move that the question be now put.
David Shearer.
Chair. Sir, I'm concerned too that the bill here is inappropriately named as it is, and it really should be the social housing rip-off bill, because that's effectively what it is. It does not in any way reflect what this government intends to do with the social housing sector, which is to gut it. This has been on the agenda of this government for generations, and it doesn't stop here, sir. So we know what's going to happen, and we saw what happened when the Salvation Army just the other day pulled out of the government's plan to push that social housing towards them. They did the sums. They recognised that they were unable to be able to run a social housing sector. And this government wants to push it on them in the way that they've done it in Australia, except that what the government hasn't calculated in comparison with the Australian model is that it is much, much bigger. And the social housing providers in Australia are looking after tens or even hundreds of thousands of people there. Here, it is much more embryonic. It cannot scale up to that sort of impact. So the question really here, sir, is we're sitting here under urgency, pushing through a bill on social housing that will radically reform and change social housing in New Zealand. And we're doing it under urgency because we don't want those social agencies to come in front of us, in front of a select committee, and actually talk about what the real issues are and what is actually going to happen should this bill go through. So this is the best way of making sure that the public are kept in the dark, that everybody else out there is kept in the dark about what the government's real agenda is, which is to make sure that social housing is radically transformed from what we see today. And what we are going to be seeing instead is that those social providers will not be able to cope with what the government is wanting them to do. They will see a siloing effect within those community providers as well. We will not have the overview that we have today, but more importantly, they will see many of these houses begin to drift into the private sector to benefit private landlords. And if there is one amazing trend of the last few years under this government, both with the housing crisis in Auckland and what is going to happen here, it is the enrichment of private landlords. The few are getting richer and the rest of them cannot afford to get into a house. And that's what's happening and will happen with this process here and before this bill. So, sir, this bill is wrongly named. It cannot be named the remedial housing, whatever it is supposed to be. It's the social housing rip-off, sir, because if that's effectively what it is. It is putting private landlords and private home owners before the rest of New Zealand. And we've seen it all around. I've certainly seen it in my electorate. I've seen it all around certainly electorates where there are high proportions of social housing. We are seeing families and communities being disrupted because people are moving around and they're being turfed out of their house. Kids that are going to school, changing schools over and over, many schools having 25-30% churn. They can't learn. So it's disrupting communities, it's hindering kids in their education, and sir, most importantly, it's ripping New Zealanders off and making sure that instead of it helping the New Zealanders that need it, it's actually helping those private landlords which are going to be enriched. And certainly with the latest round of changes that have occurred to try and curb the housing crisis in Auckland, certainly the people who are benefiting in that circumstance is the private landlord. The first homeowners are not getting a look in. People who need social housing, they're not getting a look in. This is dismembering and ensuring that those people who really need help are pushed to one side, and the few, the rich few that put the money into the coffers of that party over there, they are the people who are being enriched and being favoured above the others. And, sir, that is totally unfair, and that is why, sir, the Labour Party is absolutely in opposition to this bill.
The Honourable Annette King.
Thank you very